Good day, everyone. So today I have a very unique person on this conversation with me. We met about 16 years ago, thereabouts, yeah, during our NYC in Borno State. And we became friends ever since then. We've always been in touch. I don't want to make any elaborate introduction of this person. She's going to come here and tell us more about herself. She is Dr. Jane Nebe. I know she wouldn't even know that I know that middle name, but I can still remember. Dr. Jane, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I'm fine, thank you. And more importantly, thank you for giving me this opportunity to have this chat with you. You know,
you're welcome. You're most welcome.
And I remember when we met in Monguno, yeah. Somehow I've always called you professor. You know, I won't tell you the reason why I started calling you professor now. So maybe into the chat, I'll reveal the secret.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we all left Borno State, but I think you stayed back for a while. You didn't leave Borno immediately after we finished our service in 2006.
Yeah.
So what informed that decision?
Okay, so after the NYSC, I just thought about the fact that we're about to start work, going into the world of work. And I felt, well, maybe I should just volunteer for 1 year just to start off my work. I know the NYSC is like a volunteering thing, but I wanted something that was to do with faith-based organizations, tried because of the connection to my own faith. So I spent 1 year volunteering with Fellowship of Christian Students in Borno State. So I was in position in Mongunu, which is another part of Borno. I was in Medjugorje, but still Borno State. And I did that for 1 year before I returned to Lagos.
Okay, so you got to Lagos and you started work, I think, in education still.
Okay, so when I came down to Lagos after the program, even while I was still trying to round up that volunteering year, I knew that I was going directly back. So already while at university, I studied pure and industrial chemistry. For my third year, I'd already made up my mind about what I wanted to do. I knew that I did not want a career as a scientist, chemical scientist, that I wanted to work with young people. I have always known I have a passion for young people, but you know that education is not a very popular field of study, or because of the poor remuneration and other negative discrimination against that profession. So it wasn't something I considered when I was going to university. But when I told after I did this IT thing. I worked in the industry for about 3 to 6 months, and I realized that this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I really want to be in a situation where I can help people, particularly young people, achieve their whether educational or career aspirations. So once I finished that 1 year of volunteering, I came back to Lagos actually to start a postgraduate diploma in education at the University of Lagos. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was after the PDG, right? Oh no, PGD. Yeah. That you then proceeded into having a master's in education in Unilag.
Yes. Because I didn't do education with my first degree, I did pure and industrial chemistry. By the way, I graduated with a 2-1. It's just that I knew that I wanted to go into education at that point. So I then had to, because that was the easier way, or within the Nigerian context, you really need to do a PhD before you make that kind of
that switch. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, you had your master's in Unilag, and then you went to UK again almost immediately to have another master's.
I did. So maybe that's where you call me from. So I've always loved studying, I've always, knowledge, acquiring knowledge. It's always been, it was a big thing for me then. No longer anymore. I'm done. At that time, acquiring knowledge was quite important to me. And just because, so I had a first degree in pure industrial chemistry, I felt that I needed to catch up because I had not done education for long. So after I did that PhD, and then I did a master's there at the University of Lagos, the opportunity came for me to apply for a scholarship. I've always had a scholarship in mind. I've always wanted to study abroad. I've always wanted to get a scholarship. However, when the opportunity came, the result for my first master's was not ready. And so I could not even apply for a PhD with my UNILAG master's result because the result was not ready at that time. So I then decided to go for another master's because my PhD was sufficient to be able to apply for. My PhD and my first degree was sufficient to be able to apply for that master's. That's why it became a second master's. It wasn't as if I needed to do two masters from the beginning, but I just wanted to take advantage of the scholarship opportunity, knowing that my results would be required. I had to now apply for masters which had my PhD and my BSc to satisfy the requirements. And I did get the scholarship. So I went to do a master's in curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment at University of London. Then the school, Institute of Education, was affiliated to University of London, but now it has been merged with UCL. So I'm a graduate of UCL, if that makes sense.
Yeah, congratulations. So now, people might not know, pedagogy is like the study of structuring how education is being, administered to people, correct?
Yeah. So curriculum is what to teach. Pedagogy, this is just the simplified. It's of course more complex than that. Curriculum, what to teach. Pedagogy, how to teach. Assessment, how to assess, or how do we know that what was taught in the way it was taught was learned, how much of it was learned, assessing that, yeah.
And now, so this education that you have acquired and the information you have in this principle or this methodology of assessing and administering education and even structuring education, because that's what syllabus is all about.
Yeah.
How well would you say it has been very useful to you in the Nigerian space? Because you are back in Nigeria now, and I know you are doing a lot of things in education. So how well would you say you have been able to use that knowledge to influence educational decisions in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you for that question. First of all, let me say that all my working years so far has been within the educational space. And so whatever education I've acquired, I've found whether direct or indirect bearing or whatever job I was doing part-time, if that makes sense, right? So I've had the opportunity to work in primary school, although I was like heading, had assistant head teacher and stuff like that. I've had the opportunity to work in a Nigerian university, and I did that as I worked as an administrator at that university. I've had the opportunity to work on a research project that involved me being the researcher in charge of education and schools. So I went into schools to collect data, all right, from young people, both in primary school and in secondary school. And then I've also had the opportunity to work in WAEC. WAEC has to do with, that's the West African Examination Council, which is about assessment, okay? And so you find that the education I've acquired, every point in time, I've had direct or indirect impact on what I've been doing over the years. Now, let me also emphasize that my own specialization was assessment. So, in the sense that I was looking, for example, when I did my PhD, I looked, and that's where you would find that trajectory when I did my master's. So when I did the first master's, and I had to focus on chemistry because that was my first background and all of that. But my program was called Educational Foundations. And then I focused on educational measurement and evaluation, so assessment part. When I did the second master's, although the course was curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, I still focused on assessment, although For my project, I focused on pedagogy. The reason was simple. I needed data about assessment from my parent. But you know how getting result and all of that, it was a bit difficult. So I had to then adapt or modify my topic to then focus on the pedagogy aspect of the course I did. So essentially what I did then was to ask or research on how Nigerians who were studying at my university were adapting to the pedagogy system in that university at that time, because it was a bit different. That was personal experience, and that was what informed that decision. So back to your question on the kind of peering, it has had both direct and indirect impact. I want to also emphasize at this point that what education should do, it's not just about acquiring specific knowledge in relation to the topic, but education should be able to open up your mind, should help you to discover yourself. Okay, because sometimes that's why you find that a lot of people will go to school and end up not doing things connected to their school, but because they found themselves, their strengths, what they are really interested. So what education did for me within Nigeria and outside Nigeria specifically was to help me to begin to identify and fine-tune what I would like to, the area of impact I really wanted to focus on after university. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I believe so. So and I know when you got back to Nigeria, I know you've had to set up a couple of workshops and also some businesses that support students that are trying to look for scholarships abroad or even admission. And so could you tell us more about that and how that has been evolving since you returned to Nigeria?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that question. So, because I was opportuned to get the Commonwealth Scholarship for a master's, and then I was also opportuned to get the same Commonwealth Scholarship for a PhD. So at that point, I was usually getting a lot of inquiries, even when I was doing the master's, but it became more frequent when I got the same scholarship for a PhD. So I was getting a lot of inquiries about how did I get this scholarship? What do I need to get scholarship? How do I get admission at UK? And things like that. So that question was coming a lot of times. So I found that I kept repeating myself when I speak to her, answer their question, I speak to he, answer their question. So it's like a cycle. So I thought to myself, okay, what if I begin to think about these things in a more structured form? So at that time, what I did essentially, I had a blog where I interviewed those who had obtained scholarship, different people from different countries, and just put it up in that blog. So when people ask me about scholarship, I'm like, oh, just go to that blog. I've already interviewed people with their experiences. And then if you have any specific question for me, then let's talk about it. After that, I found that I also continued to get inquiries about people who actually did not even know how to go about this whole application process. Now, for me, when I was applying for my master's and the PhD, I did it alone. I did a lot of learning on the job, going online, doing my research, trying to find out what is up. I didn't know anybody. By the time I got my master's scholarship, I didn't know anybody in my immediate cycle of family and friends and colleagues who were in scholarship. But I've always wanted that. I have always had that desire to study in the UK. London. I don't know why. Okay, I think I know why. I had a lecturer in chemistry, undergraduate, and one of those days he mentioned that he studied at Loughborough University in the UK. And I think that was what triggered it. Oh, so I should be able to study abroad too. And that's it. So, but the point I'm trying to say is that when a lot of inquiries will come about not knowing how to go about this thing, that was when I thought about, okay, what if I decide to make this like a business? People are taking my time. I spend time to put people through these things.
That is the Indigo in you, not the Yoruba in you.
No, that is the human in me, the human who is trying to put value on knowledge and time. So because I was spending a lot of time, sometimes I would have to also review personal statements, purpose. I did this for free, but I felt at a time that I should begin to charge for this thing. And that's actually how it became something I did. Eventually, I registered my company, and that's what we've been doing for a while. Although I went back to full-time work at different points, but it's always been there on the side for me. So things I do after work, after something like my side also. Sometimes it's like my full-time also when I'm not fully at work. So essentially, what I do now, although I do study abroad consulting, offer counseling for those who want to study abroad. I also offer support with application as well, whether for scholarship or for university admission. And then I also offer that proofreading, editing services for those who want to submit things like that. So that's just one of the things I do among others. I think that also triggered the career path I found myself in right now, because right now, one of the things I do full-time in double quotes though, is I'm a study abroad consultant. So I've done that working for other people. I also do that working for myself. Okay. And right now I also have a partnership with an institution called organization called Connect to Counselors, where we offer free counseling, free application support. There's a partnership going on there. So it's been an enlightening and a journey of growth. On the side, I'm still a researcher because I'm also working as a researcher on a part-time, on a full-time, on a project, a UK project, having different locations. I represent the researcher for Nigeria. So I do multiple things. You know, this is Nigeria now. You have to do whatever.
You have to multitask, I can understand.
You know, to maximize your potential, really. So
yeah, I can understand. And that's very good on you. So something came to my mind now, because your core and specialty is in assessment, student assessment. Yeah. And one would think that it is something that could help perhaps our secondary school and primary school education in Nigeria. Because what I've noticed abroad is the difference in the way we are being assessed in Nigeria, you know, pushing us towards just being extremely individualistic and competitive. I want to be the first, the best in my class, and all of that. Whereas my kids, when they were in Dubai, you wouldn't even see any position on their report sheets. They just assess them personally on their strengths and weaknesses and where they need to improve upon. And the same thing here in Sydney. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think our own system in Nigeria is better or, you know, not, against what we have, what I've said I've experienced both in UAE and in Australia now?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say is that things have changed. Okay. So growing up, positioning was like, you know, giving position was like it was like normal. But I think because of the outcry against that, a lot of private universities do not give positions. So private, not universities, sorry, private primary schools, private secondary schools try not to give positions. What they will just give maybe your grades or your percentages, and then maybe there will be a comment on that. So just because to limit those rancor that we have, you know, where, oh, why is my child not first? Why is my child 15? You know, so times have changed. Schools, particularly private schools, have taken on board feedback, and a lot of those schools do not give positions. So that's one. Then, generally speaking, I need us to understand that assessments cannot be divorced from issues around curriculum as well as pedagogy. All right. Now, if you look at our Nigerian education system, let's look at our public system. We do know that the assessment, you know, you talk about how it is a bit competitive and independent, but look at education in itself. You know, when you have a class where there are about 90 students, okay, who have to compete for learning, you know, within that space. So I'm not even talking about competing for getting good grades, but even compete to learn. So it can't, so this, you cannot divorce assessment. It doesn't stand alone. It is interconnected to the structures and system around curriculum and pedagogy, around the teaching and learning that goes on in school. Because what are you assessing? Is it not what students have learned? Have they learned? What did they learn? You know, so that's one of the challenges that assessment is. So it's for me, I'm very careful about comparing assessments without comparing even the education system itself. It's problematic to do so. So abroad, you would have a situation where the class size is quite small, but you can't. So how do you effectively assess a class of 80 students? And that's why standardized examination is kind of popular in our context, just because they always have to do with the issue of large class size. Beyond that, even the staff strength, you know where you are. You can have about 2 teachers, the main teacher, teaching assistant for a class of 20. But here you have 1 teacher who is to assess a class of 60, 70 students. How can this teacher give individualized feedback as assessment other than those tick box tick? So you see why, for me, we cannot divorce the issue of assessment from issues of pedagogy, issues of curriculum. Teaching and learning situation in Nigeria, it's difficult. These teachers have a lot, there is a lot of expectations put on them. And so many times those assessments that we see is just like the best that they can do in the system. Now, you know the funny thing, think about it. You know the disparity in public education system and private education system. What is that disparity? What is it? You see that core thing. So the quality of teaching and learning going on in public system versus the quality of teaching and learning going on in private system is different. And so they can afford to do something similar to what you will find. But mind you, the private system is not homogeneous, because within the private education system, we have the low cost, we have the middle low, we have the middle, we have the, so it kind of, there's this gradient moving from, so it's not homogeneous, it's not one type of, it's a different quality, even in private education system, and that also applies to public education system. I didn't go to a federal government college, but I heard that the provisions in the federal government college is better than the provisions that you will find in most state secondary schools. So you see those kind of disparities shaping the kind of teaching and learning that goes on. And so also that eventually affecting the kind of assessment, especially outcomes that come from these things. Have you not even wondered why we go abroad, Nigerians go abroad, and we do so well? I know competition can be seen negative, but again, for me, this is my personal opinion, I think it's also a good thing because it allows us to give our best. And so when we leave the shores of Nigeria, we still indirectly or directly giving our best and still go out there. This is my personal opinion.
I appreciate that, but as just an add-on to that, I think most Nigerians, they do well abroad, not particularly because of that competitive spirit, quote and unquote. It is because there are so many other things in our society that we struggle with, that we don't struggle with abroad.
Exactly, that's the system that's missing.
Yeah. So the system supports you, sort of. You don't think about, oh, there's no power, there's no water. Oh, this traffic from Lagos Island to mainland, it's not there. You can just hop on a train and get to where you are going to, most parts, smoothly, timely, and easy. So it helps your productivity. But be that as it may, Nigerians are generally, quote and unquote, codedly, again, competitive because they want to always show that they know what they are doing and they put they put in their best into things.
Yeah.
So
I want to also add something, which is, and I think this is important, especially when we have audiences who are not Nigerians. So Nigeria is very, very heterogeneous. Heterogeneous in terms of social status, particularly. And because of that, it kind of shaped the kind of learning experiences or learning experiences that people get. Within this same Nigeria, you have people who are getting learning experiences at par with developed countries. Developed in double quote, we have issues with that nomenclature. They usually say we should do something like global south, global north. So within Nigeria, you have a group of people who are getting high quality of education. You then have within this Nigeria those who are getting low, who are not getting adequate, quality education, and that begins to tie into the wider society. So you begin to talk about socio-cultural impacts, socio-economic impacts on teaching and learning experience within the school. So it's not isolated as well, because within the system, people are getting amazing quality of education at par with those ones we call high standard. Whereas, unfortunately, some are still struggling with getting basic quality. So Nigeria is very heterogeneous along social factors, cultural factors, economic factors, many factors like that. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that.
Just to buttress your point, of course, it might not be as good as it used to be. Most people of our own generation, people in their 40s and above, we went to public school one point in our life. Okay, even if you went to private school in primary and secondary, most likely your university is public.
Yeah.
And even, so, and it is that same system that we went through, and we are not doing badly where we find ourselves. So that is just to buttress your point. Now, if you look at, because we are talking about education now, okay, and I want to be very mindful of your time because I don't want to keep you too long.
No, go ahead.
So if we look at all the problems, that we have in our educational system, how would you suggest we go towards solving it in the simplest way or form? What is that one thing that can tip the scale of our public education now in primary and secondary school towards being better than it is today?
Yeah. You'll be surprised at my answer, but this is it. This is what I think. And this is also back, I would say. Children who go to school come from somewhere. They come from families. It is the family who determine which school a child will go, private or public. Higher level private, lower level private. It is the family. Sometimes that decision is not made by their circumstances. They are forced to make or follow particular decision. So personally, I feel, and this, like I said, this is also back, that the government, in trying to, not that people will say government should do this in school. I think the government should focus on improving the lives of the people. When the lives of the people are improved, it directly or indirectly affects the well-being and the welfare of the children and maybe young people who have to go to school. Take, for instance, you as a person, the quality of education your children is getting today is because of you, two of us. They are where they are going to school, where they are going to school today because of you. Why? Your circumstances changed. Your circumstances, in double quotes, improved. Now, compared to somebody else who has to struggle to give the child 3 square meals a day, their options are limited in terms of the kind of education that child will get. And that kind of also speaks into the schools themselves, because you find that the level of commitment, in public schools compared to private schools, this is contested, okay? I think it depends on the school. You can't generalize these things. But all I'm trying to say in essence is that the well-being, the welfare of the people, the parents, the families where these children come from is really important. If their lives, their living, their situation is improved, it will benefit the child directly or indirectly. Okay, so what can be done? Simple. Put system in place, put structures in place, put opportunities in place for Nigerians to better their lives. If their lives are better, they can give their child the best. Because in Nigeria, a lot of parents They value education. So it's not as if, although we have issues of, out of school children, especially in some part of the country, but the average typical Nigerian, especially in Southeast, Southwest, values education. So many times when you see a child being out of school, it's either because the parents cannot afford to put that child in school, number one. Sometimes even within systems of free education, they will say they cannot afford the school uniform. They will say they cannot afford the PTA level that the student has to pay. Okay? And even in systems where, okay, maybe they provide all of these things, sometimes because of the economic situation of the family, they want the child to stay at home and help them to work goods so they can get money or income to be able to feed themselves. So the child who is out of school for different reasons. A child is also sent to go and become housemaid in another family because this family feel they can take care of that family, of that child. So they send that child to be an housemaid in another family. The one who has paid for the housemaid says, I brought this housemaid so that you can help me. And so we'll not send the housemaid to school and then the housemaid says, so you see, family circumstances eventually kind of shapes, the experiences, learning experiences in a way. There are other things, of course, quality teachers, quality teaching, funded schools are well funded with good infrastructure, teaching learning facilities and things like that. Those are important. But I feel personally also that if the government can set up systems, put systems, structures, opportunities in place where individuals can improve their own lifestyle, it will definitely benefit the child, teenager, the youth who are in school. Now, imagine where we are today, where Nigeria public university, I don't know, I've not checked the news today, recently. The public university was on strike for months. And so those who could afford it, their parents moved them away from the public school and enrolled them in private universities. And then those who can still, gather together opportunities and maybe their social capital have traveled abroad to go and study. Those who cannot afford to do that are waiting for us strike to be called up. I'm not sure if I need to confirm the news, but I know they were at home as of last month. Okay, so you see how it shapes the quality of education and learning experience that students get. So for me, the solution for the system, our Nigerian system, to make the country conducive, comfortable for people. Okay, let employment rates be reduced to the barest minimum. Let education be funded. Let people's life, get opportunities to be able to improve their situation. So this is just so there is no one size fits all shoes, if that makes sense. But this is the part I feel that is really important. And you know why again it's important? Because my one of the things I do a lot is study abroad, right? Who are those that can afford to study abroad?
The rich folks.
You get what I'm saying? So for people that like me that didn't come from very well-off family, we had to rely on scholarship. But again, the scholarships are highly competitive. So those who are not fortunate to be selected, what happens to them? So that is it.
So this is this is a very awesome explanation, but one would think that even in my own personal corners, I tell people that if you want to solve the problem of any country, the way to solve it is to provide opportunities for people. Because our natural disposition as a people is for us to live a life of dignity. Nobody wants to be a beggar or,
I agree.
So the point is that without giving people the opportunity to live a life of dignity, it's going to be difficult for people to even make informed and good decisions about themselves and their world. But be that as it may, on my wrapping question to you would be, if you were to pay a lot of attention to education, say from primary to secondary and to tertiary, which one of those three strata would you think is most important and for us to put a lot of resources into and get better first?
Okay, so personally, I'm very, very much fascinated about secondary school education, all right? However, in terms of importance, I don't think anyone is more important than the other. Let's look at primary school. Someone who has not successfully negotiated primary school, who can't read and write, won't be able to do well in secondary school in the first instance. Okay? And then someone who hasn't successfully negotiated secondary school will not be able to even get admission into higher education. So you find that all of these are important. However, personally, I would really want to focus a lot on the secondary school. Why? You see, at that stage, people are being forced, or not forced, but of necessity, young people have to make long-term decisions. Because we are telling a child in SS1 to decide whether he's going to do science or arts or social science. So it means if this student chooses sciences, most likely these life options will be constrained by science pathways, you know. And so it's very, if that child misses it at that point, there is this spiral effect to have subsequent decision, what course to do during the WAEC exam, which course to apply for in university, or if you're not going to university, what should they do with their life after secondary school? So this is why, for me, I think a lot of focus, particularly, should be put on the senior secondary education, because the stakes are very much high. A lot of people, you may not go to university and do just fine in life, but if you don't go to secondary school, it has impacts, viral impacts, kind of. So because even if you want to learn a trade, at some point you might need to even be able to read and write. You have done that in primary school, but then secondary school does more to kind of help you to begin to apply the things that you are able to read and write to, you know, specific or specialized subjects. So I would really like the idea of putting a lot of attention on the secondary school, particularly senior secondary school. You know that a lot of students who do not do well or do not get the required grades in these subjects that are important to them in WAEC have their life in limbo for 1-2 years. Maybe they're writing, they have to write GC again. Or those that write JAM, after writing JAM because they didn't get the cutoff point, they have to do JAM second time, do JAM third time, their life in limbo. You know, so, but if they've gotten it right, if they've gotten quality education, quality learning experiences, you know, at that stage, it becomes easy, you know, to make that transition, even if it's not higher education they want to go to. If they want to go into vocational education, they want to acquire vocational skills, it's also very useful. So that's why personally, I think, and again, the truth of the matter is that not everybody will go to university, but I feel everybody should go to secondary school. It's really important. This is my personal opinion. And again, this is also backed by some research as well. So for me, I think the priority should be given to secondary school, particularly senior secondary school. Quality of learning and teaching, and the assessment, because they have to write high stakes exam after senior secondary school.
I agree with you completely, and I tell people too that secondary education is the most important. I appreciate the fact that primary education, yes, that's when you learn to read and write and all of that. But a lot of people don't really get into being serious with their education until they are in secondary school, and particularly until the last 3 years, you know, of that journey. And I think it is very insightful that you mentioned that putting us in that situation of choosing whether I want to be a science student or a commercial student or an art student is really, thinking of it now, is really a stupid way of structuring education. I'm serious.
Well, we wouldn't say stupid, but it's a lot of pressure. Because even people haven't found themselves. People don't really know, you know, but they have to decide, they have to choose. And for the next 2-3 years of their life, they must stick to that path.
And that is why, and that is why I think it is stupid, really. Okay, because how many schools in Nigeria have an educational counselor that you can go to in your GSS3 or GSS2 and say, I'm beginning to think I want to be a medical doctor or an engineer or an accountant? Okay, so, and you might not at that time know what an accountant does other than calculate money, for example. But if you had an educational counselor, he or she can then tell you the job as an accountant. If you graduate as an accountant, these are other things you can do. You could be an auditor, for example. You could be an accountant. You could be a tax person. You could, then you begin to now explore. If I want to be a tax person, is it best for me to go through accounting, or are there other routes I can, So I really think it's, now thinking about it, it's really a very stupid decision that we are forced to be scientists or be social scientists.
Decide your life.
If I knew better, okay, after I graduated from engineering, I began to think I might have done well being an economist, because economy now began to really, really interest me and fascinate me. And at times I would think, oh, maybe it is law that I should have studied, because I like to debate and argue and all of that. And I like to get my point across, to people. And I also like to seek justice for people. So if we have had a broad opportunity, to have that flexibility within the system, maybe when in part 3 or thereabout, I began to think, I want to be a farmer, I might have just switched, So I appreciate that point. And on the final note, where can people get you? How can they, if somebody thinks, okay, I need this person's services, how can they reach out to you?
That's right. Thank you for that. So just before I provide my contact, I just want to also respond to the whole idea of people having to select careers or career pathways as early as being in SS1, or in fact GS3. When I was in school, it was GS3, but now I hear some schools allow people to make that decision in SS. So, but you see, sometimes if you cannot change the way things are done, you might be able to make it easier. Okay, and that's where you have raised the issue of the counselor. The counselor, funny enough, a lot of schools, even public schools, have counselors, but there are two sides to it. Is the counselor doing enough to help students access information that they need to make this important decision? Two, are the students themselves taking advantage of the information and resources available for them to be able to make more informed choices and decisions regarding career? So, for instance, the education counselor in school should be able to organize career fairs, have career events. I know there was a school where I worked for one and a half years. I finished, I stopped with them in December. I was assigned to a school, and part of my role was to give, of course, I do advisory services, especially for those, of course, study abroad things. But within the school, they had two school counselors actually. And this, I saw situations where the school counselor, because they also invited us, they would organize career events. They invite people from different careers to come and talk to the students about their career. What do you need to be able to do to enter their career and all of that. And then, of course, the counselor was there to also attend to individual exams. So I think we need to do much. If we want to put that enormous decision upon young people, and it's not just in Nigeria, you find that across different countries that young people have to make a decision about their future as early as possible. But I feel that since this is what it is, until that is changed, then those who are responsible for ensuring that these students or young people are making the right decisions are doing their part in supporting them. Okay? So if you're a counselor in a school, if you're a father, you're a mother, you're a brother, you're a sister, you have young ones, don't be the one telling them you must do law or you must do engineering. No, you should be the one asking them, okay, what do you like? What are you interested in? When they have questions, you should be the one trying to ask them, not the one saying, no, you cannot be a teacher or teacher about, that kind of. So we have a huge responsibility as adults in the spaces of these young people to help them as they navigate this important stage of their life, pending when the system changes to allow them. So that said, I can be contacted through different means on Instagram, by email, Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, everywhere. But I'm going to just type in the chat box right now. I don't know how you'll be able to share that, but let me just put my email address there where I can easily. So at least you can pick that and
yeah. So I'll ping that and your LinkedIn profile on this chat on YouTube when I upload it.
Yes. So after now as well, I could just send you that. But my phone number is 080-32-066-702. Of course, because it's a Nigerian number, you have to put if you are calling from us in Nigeria, you have to put the +2344. So again, the number is 80-032-066-702. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll add that. So, yeah. So now let me tell you why I started calling you professor back in 2005, 2006. It is because whenever we had any chat and when you talk to people, you want to always explain things in detail. So that's why the professor accolade, that's how it came about.
That's good to know. Thank you. I mean, why? To the audience, let me tell you something about Jide. So I met him during the NYC, as I said. We stayed in the same Corpus Lodge. So that's how I met him. And one thing I can tell you about him is that he was I don't know, I hope he has not changed, but he used to be very calm guy. You know how during youth service we had the troublemakers, the mysterious, and Jide was different. Jide was very calm, very genuine. I usually wonder how and of course he was religious too. So I used to think maybe it was because of being religious that enabled him to be that kind of person. He was a very lovely person to work with then, and he was very focused because, like he said, we've kept in touch after the as we left NYC and he's a very focused, very,